Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. This is the next edition of the IBFP's What's Next. And let me just kind of give everybody a little synopsis about what the next, the What's Next podcast is with the IBFP. And the What's Next podcast is where we kind of break down what could possibly next for the fighters. And, sometimes, depending on what makes sense, what's right, it's just our estimation as what could be next, what should be next, or what may be next. So we're just going to break down the potential opponent and fight and give you the reasons why we believe this could be the next fight for these particular fighters. So let's just, with no further ado, let's just break it down and get right into it. So we believe for Mikey Garcia, what's next for him could be Danny Garcia at 147 pounds. And there's a couple of reasons why we believe it. So let's just break it down and get right into it. First of all, Mikey Garcia was quoted as stating, maybe I stay at 147 pounds at welterweight. Maybe I come down to 135 at lightweight. But at 35, that is the most interesting fight with Lomachenko, and I would love to take on that fight. Now, that's a direct quote from Mikey Garcia. Now, the funny thing about that, though, is Mikey Garcia has never lost before. Mikey Garcia has never tasted defeat. So tasting defeat at the hands of Errol Spence Jr. at 147 pounds, he had his heart set on being, being a champion, a 5-division world champion instead of 4. Mikey Garcia has even stated after the fight that he still believes he can be a 5-division world champion. He doesn't believe losing to Errol Spence would necessarily stop that. He believes he can get a belt from another champion. He believes he can compete at the welterweight division. He spent a lot of time and work on his body, and it showed in the fights and points where he could stand up to Errol Spence Jr.'s powerful shots, his biggest shots. So Mikey Garcia, the only thing that we would have to argue about Mikey Garcia in the fight with Errol Spence Jr. is the fact that, his offensive production wasn't there and he wasn't able to make the necessary adjustments to compete with an Errol Spence Jr. But maybe the height and reach advantage was a little bit too much for Mikey Garcia. Now, if we keep digging into this fight with Mikey Garcia versus Danny Garcia and why it makes sense, we also look at another reason, and I just like to preface everything by saying that I truly believe that Mikey Garcia should go back down in weight. I think Mikey Garcia's best weight should be at 140 pounds because I think, we all want to see the Vasily Lomachenko, but I truly don't know if Mikey Garcia can make 135 again after putting on this weight and this muscle and having time to change your body to do that, to move up 2 divisions. I just don't know if that makes sense for Mikey to go back down to 135, but I think 140 would probably be his best weight. He has multiple great fights there, such as a Regis Prograis, Josh Taylor, he has a Maurice Hooker, Alex Saucedo, so he has plenty of fights to be made at 140 pounds should he want to stay there. But I understand why Mikey Garcia has already stated that he would consider being at 147 pounds and competing with other welterweights and going after another a 5th division world championship. And maybe Errol Spence was just a bad opponent for him, but Danny Garcia is a good opponent in a number of ways, and there's a logic as to why Mikey may pick him as his next opponent. And so let's just keep going into it. Sergey Lipinets defeating Lamont Peterson would give Mikey Garcia more an understanding of what it takes to be a welterweight and more confidence as far as being a welterweight. You have to understand that Sergey Lipinets moved up in weight, defeated Lamont Peterson. Some people will say that the form, the form of the knockout, the brutality of it was worse than what Errol Spence Jr. did. Even though Errol Spence Jr. dominated Lamont Peterson, you have to give him all the credit in the world. Sergey Lipinets seemed to hurt Lamont Peterson in a much different and brutal fashion as far as the way he went out compared to just having the towel thrown in. So I will say that the Sergey Lipinets fight kind of could give Mikey Garcia some confidence that, hey, he can belong, he can fit in at the welterweight division. The fact that he stood up to Errol Spence Jr. shots for 12 rounds could give him confidence. But also then you look at something like this, and you look at, Danny Garcia versus Adrian Granados. Adrian Granados is a guy who moves up and down in weight classes all the time. He's a tough, rugged opponent, and I do believe he's going to give Danny Garcia some problems in this fight. But I'm leaning towards Danny Garcia to get the victory. But the key thing that may give Mikey Garcia more encouragement as to reason why that he may be able to stay at 147 and pick a guy like Danny Garcia, and why that may be a better fight for him is a few things. One, Danny Garcia has nowhere else to go right now. You see, Danny Garcia already turned down a $5 million offer, didn't even want to negotiate with Terrence Crawford for a potential showdown. Keith Thurman is looking to engage with Manny Pacquiao, and Sean Porter is looking to engage with Errol Spence. That leaves no top welterweights available for Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia would look at a fight with Mikey Garcia with open arms. He's just seen Mikey Garcia get dominated against, Errol Spence Jr. Mikey Garcia has not won a fight at welterweight, and so you could see how Danny Garcia would take on this challenge and would open arms and see this is a winnable fight for him. And plus, Mikey Garcia is a big name that would come with a huge payday, and plus both of these guys are on the same promotional banner with the PBC. These guys are PBC fighters, so whether it be on Fox or Showtime, these guys would be under the same thing. These guys are both advised by Al Heyman, and so that would make it just that much easier. These guys have no particular opponent set. These guys are basically in limbo as far as their careers go. This would be a perfect fight for both of these guys for a number of reasons, not just promotional, and that just because of the promotional factor would make the fight much easier. But I think for Mikey Garcia, Mikey Garcia is 31 years old. He's 5'6", and he has a 68-inch reach. So against Errol Spence Jr., those dimensions, when you look at it, Errol Spence Jr. was younger than him. He was 29 years old. He was a southpaw, which made it even more tricky. And Errol Spence Jr. was 5'9.5" to Mikey Garcia's 5'6". So 5'9.5" to Mikey Garcia's 5'6" played a huge difference in the fight. Errol Spence Jr.'s 72-inch to Mikey Garcia's 68-inch reach played a huge difference in the fight. But then when you look at it on the reverse end with Danny Garcia, that's a much more winnable fight. Danny Garcia is the same age as Mikey Garcia. They're both 31 years old. Danny Garcia is an orthodox fighter, and Danny Garcia is shorter than Errol Spence. He's 5'8.5", making it much easier for Mikey Garcia to get in range because he's 5'6". And Danny Garcia has a 68.5-inch reach, and Mikey Garcia has a 68-inch reach. So these guys only have half an inch reach difference. So just the dimensions of the fight, the promotions of the fight, all of these reasons make sense as to why Mikey Garcia may target Danny Garcia, because it would still be a very big and interesting fight to see these two guys go at it. Danny Garcia did move up from 140 pounds. So, you could see how these guys naturally would fit more as far as size. I think Danny Garcia would be a very dangerous fight for Mikey Garcia for a number of reasons if we break down the fight. I think that Danny Garcia is a very good fighter. And what also makes Danny Garcia intriguing for Mikey is the fact that he has a low work rate. I think he got completely outworked by Sean Porter in their last fight, and I think that Mikey Garcia got completely outworked by Errol Spence in their last fight, having Errol Spence throw over 1,000 punches. So if you look at it like this, both of these guys like to wait on their shots. Both of these guys like to counter their opponent, and I believe styles really do make fights. So both of these guys will be looking for shots. Both of these guys will not be looking to waste shots all night, but both of these guys probably won't outwork the other guy for the most part. It will be a chess match throughout the fight and counter. So I think this is the type of fight that stylistically fits Mikey Garcia better than Errol Spence Jr. I think this is the type of fight that makes the most sense for both fighters, since neither one of these guys have a big fight. Neither one of these guys have a particular great direction to go in. Danny Garcia losing his 2 step-up fights against Keith Thurman, against Sean Porter, and that has to mess with Danny Garcia. Mikey Garcia losing against Errol Spence Jr. So these guys have both lost to other top welterweights. So these guys fighting, being on the same promotional banner, these guys having similar dimensions as far as reach advantage, the height advantage not being a huge difference, and the fact that Mikey Garcia is just as experienced as Danny, these guys would both do well in this fight. I think both of these guys, it would make a chess match. I think this would be a great fight. I think it'll be a very competitive fight for both fighters. I don't think anybody would be able to say Danny would dominate Mikey or Mikey would dominate Danny. I think it'll be a very close and interesting fight, and for that reason I believe this could be what's next for Mikey Garcia down the road. I think it would make a lot of sense for various reasons, and I think that Mikey Garcia and Danny Garcia should actually look into this fight if Mikey decides to stay at 147 pounds. My recommendation for Mikey is to drop down to 140. Try the waters there, try against the champions there, try to get another belt there, and if you're truly intent on moving up, but take your time. But at this point I think 140 is his best weight. But if he's going to stay at welterweight, I think the Danny Garcia fight makes the most sense for him, since none of these guys have any opponents that's available. Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, Sean Porter, all these guys look to be booked with someone else, so it makes sense. Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao, so it makes sense why these two guys would fight each other. And I think this fight makes all the sense in the world. I think it would be a very close fight. I would even hinge on a 50-50 fight. I would say it's more even. Maybe give, both of these guys would have a different advantage in this fight. You can say Mikey's ring IQ. You can say Danny Garcia's power. We already know Danny Garcia is a knockout artist. We understand that Mikey Garcia still showed some power in the Spence fight by backing him up at times. So this would be a great fight. I would lean towards 50-50 since both of these guys, are in basically an awkward phase in their careers, looking for the fight to set them apart, to step them back up for their next big fight. And I think, the winner of this fight would be set up for another world title shot, would regain that buzz, because neither one of these guys have much of a buzz right now. I think that the winner of this type of fight would regain that buzz, but that's just my thoughts on what could be next from Mikey Garcia. Once again, Unbiased as always, it's the IBFP. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.